Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out the radio version of the show every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern on WDJY 99.1 in Atlanta. We also air on a podcasting network in Los Angeles called the 405 Media. There's a TV version of the show that airs on KMVT 15 in Silicon Valley at 8 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday nights. Both versions of the show air in other states. For these show times, plus past episodes, please visit the show's website at buildingthefutureshow.com. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com. Join me at the 10th Annual Media Excellence Awards on January 18th in Beverly Hills, California. The attendees and I will be celebrating innovation and leadership in technology and entertainment. There are 20 award categories with 1,000 nominees. These awards honor those who are creating groundbreaking technology to better our lives and celebrate the hard work, determination, and brilliance in the leadership within the companies which create the new world we live in today. I will be recording nominees and winners at the awards. For tickets and more information, go to MediaXawards.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Adrienne Meisels. She's the CEO and founder of myPlanit. Adrienne, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you guys are doing is actually really, really innovative and something I find really, really fascinating and I love in my kind of daily life. But maybe before we kind of get into that, let's start off with getting to know you a little bit better and kind of where you grew up.
Okay, awesome. Well, I grew up on the Jersey Shore. I used to love saying the New Jersey Shore, but after that TV show, I'm like a little hesitant. But
fair enough.
But those are all people who are here this summer, and they all leave. So I grew up on the Jersey Shore,
Sure.
And I went to college. I went to the University of Pennsylvania for undergraduate. I got 2 degrees there in 4 years.
Okay. What did you take, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, so I took my degree from the liberal arts school at Penn is in European history.
Okay.
And I got a degree from Wharton also in international business. It's called multinational management. But
So why European history and then kind of let's go into the multinational management?
Yeah. So my mom is actually the survivor of 2 wars.
Oh, wow.
From Europe. She's from Budapest. And my best friend in high school, her dad worked in the State Department and later became ambassador to Pakistan. And he was actually killed on the job. He and President Zia were in a plane that was exploded.
Oh,
and
that's sad.
Yeah, thanks. And his wife was also later became ambassador to Slovenia. And they were my mentors. And I wanted to go to the State Department through their legal division to negotiate peace treaties to make this world a better place. But I've always been involved in technology. So we got a computer when I was 11 years old, and I started coding when I was 11.
Interesting.
Yeah, and at Penn, I had a computer before anybody else had a computer. And I did go to law school, but between college and law school, I had to finance law school on my own.
Okay.
And I worked for 3 years as a software developer at what's now Accenture, it used to be Anderson Consulting, and at Lotus Development Corp.
Nice.
And I put myself through law school by coding at nights and on the weekends after my classes and after my studies.
That's amazing.
Thanks. Yeah.
So
I tell folks there's 2 themes to who I am: tenacity and technology.
No, that's interesting. So you were in tech. What made you kind of go into law?
Well, because I always was very focused that I wanted to go to the State Department.
Okay.
To negotiate peace treaty through their legal divisions. There's really sort of 2 main ways to go to the State Department. One is a master's in international affairs, and the other is a law degree. And I thought a law degree was much more versatile.
Sure.
But after being at a law firm for 4 years, doing large international deals in Latin America and South America, I realized I didn't want to go to the State Department. And so I went back into technology, and I went to AOL, and I was at AOL for many years, first on the business side, negotiating technology deals, and I eventually ran the innovation team, which was called New Business Ventures. And for me, it was like, as Oprah says, a 360 moment, or a full circle moment, she calls it, where I realized that, I had built product. I I was a coder. I knew revenue structures and financial models, and I knew strategic partnerships. And I started working in location-based services really early on in LBS's history in the United States, at least. So in January of '05, I had heard that the wireless carriers were being required by the FCC to put GPS into their system, so that way when we dialed 911, which is the emergency number in the United States,
Sure.
for that emergency vehicles could find us, and it was called the E911 mandate. And I was like, well, we're already getting a little bit of data into those little Nokia WAP phones we all had.
Sure. I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, if we can combine a user's location with this data, then that is going to be massive. And my mandate in running the innovation team was to create large profit generating businesses in nascent spaces. Like, don't step on the toes of existing business owners by creating new features for their businesses. Create brand new businesses leveraging existing AOL assets. So we owned MapQuest, which at the time was the leading map provider.
Yeah.
We had AIM, the buddy list, which is now being retired, sadly.
Yeah, it is sad.
Yeah, actually, and the inventor of it is an advisor and investor to myPlanit.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It took 16 years to get that patent granted, and then 3 years later they retire it. It's like, what? But so we had AIM, and I was like, well, if you can ping your people on the computer, you'll be able to ping them, put them on a map. And it was like Foursquare before Foursquare. I called it Friend and Family Finder.
Interesting.
And we had City Guide and Movie Phone. We had points of interest. I went to the president of advertising. I said, location-based advertising is coming. And I put it together into a huge strategy that I called the AOL neighborhood. And AOL actually got 5 patents granted off of that strategy. And one of them, which I know of, Facebook acquired.
Nice.
And they filed 3 more off of it, and they're now using it in their virtual assistant M 10, 12 years later.
That's really cool. So walk me through kind of the transition, from kind of, your corporate job into kind of founding your own company, myPlanit.
So that is an interesting one. I had taken a life sabbatical after AOL.
Okay.
Traveled, bought a guitar.
Sure. I do not blame you at all.
Read a lot. And when I was ready to go back and get a job, I had a meeting with, I won't say who it is. I won't say who it was, what
That's
company.
fine, sure.
They didn't have a position for me, but I was hoping that they would create one, an innovation position. I was telling them about what was actually the very early genesis of myPlanit.
Okay.
And it was, at that time, it was very focused on places. And at the end of this meeting, the person said, I really like that idea you have on places. I just might steal it. And I looked at them and I was like, what? And I said, well, take me with it. And he smiles and I said, there's a lot more of where that came from. And he says, good one. And I went home and I was talking to a friend of mine that night who actually at the time ran anti-money laundering for Morgan Stanley Smith Barney, like, a no BS type of person.
Sure.
I was telling her, she said, how'd your meeting go? And I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And then he said he might steal my idea. And she goes, what? She said, you're not doing anything. She said, why don't you just start it? Just start it. And 2 weeks later, I went to visit my mom, and she introduced me to this woman who has a software development company in New Jersey. They do military contracts. And I started telling her about the idea, and she was the exact opposite. She said, don't tell me anything more. She said, send me an NDA, put your ideas down on paper, and then come talk to me. And so I did. Yeah, I did. And I took 2 weeks. I mapped out the whole thing in like a moving PowerPoint, with animations and transitions and screens and how things would move between location and time. And went to them, and they were fascinated, and they wanted to invest $250,000. And I think they would have owned the military rights. We would have owned the sort of general public rights. Unfortunately, their R&D budget is their sort of their slush fund, and they had overages in other parts of the company, so it wiped out their budget. But I was like, if they're interested in investing $250,000 on a 2-week PowerPoint, I have something here. And that's what started it.
Wow, that's really fascinating. Actually, I always love those kind of like founding kind of stories, and how quick you kind of got funding, right?
Yeah. Well, they actually technically they didn't fund us, but because they were interested and were going to put the money in, it said that I had something there, and that's what.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. That's great.
Yeah.
So, walk me through kind of what happened after that.
So it's definitely been one of those startup stories. This is my third time trying this. myPlanit. I've had 2 times where, there's a female version of saying this and the male version. I'll give the male way. Okay. I got the ring twice and I got beat up. I stood back up again. There's a lot of lessons in learning how to hire. I think that I have been very blessed in my career at working at top firms and working with terrific people. And not having to hire on my own, right? Like having recruiters. And so there was a lot of lessons learned in the first couple times in hiring and who to look for. But also I think it was a blessing in disguise, because the vision that I had for myPlanit, the phone processor when I first started, couldn't handle the UI, couldn't handle the multiple pins on the map, couldn't handle the dynamic visual. When you look at myPlanit, you can see your life moving and zooming in and zooming out. And it was the first product was very much of a manual entry, and now almost everything is automatically done for you. And so, really this last time has, the third time is a charm, they say. I have a terrific team of people that I've brought on. Almost all of them have been part-time for equity.
Sure.
And, we're a completely bootstrapped company, and I used to be very proud of the idea, but I think I'm even more proud of this team now, because my team is just fantastic. And these folks are working this as a second job. They came on because they wanted to have a passion project. They're all invested with their heart, soul, and mind into this company. And with a part-time team, we have created a ton of complex technology. So those guys have and women have my heart. So my heart and soul. So
no, but I think that's actually really good advice in itself, right? Is because everybody kind of says that. Well, not everybody, I shouldn't say that, but like you read online that like a lot of people say that, everybody needs to quit their job and just kind of do this thing. And there's a lot of kind of successful apps and companies out there that have team members that don't all work full time or kind of do it as a passion project. And I think in my experience, some of the best and kind of most fun projects kind of start out that way, right? And then as you're kind of working on a business model and kind of trying out the idea, it's less kind of stressful for some of the people when they're not worried, like they know where their kind of paycheck's coming from, right?
Yeah, it's exactly, Kevin. I found this sort of sweet spot of people who either are consultants and therefore they're not getting equity in the companies that they're working for, so they don't sort of have that, let's call it economies of scale or potential for a bigger payout later down the line, or they're working at jobs where they're not either challenged or they find it boring, and what we're doing is very exciting. And so especially with technologists, they're creative. Yes, code is very logical, but they're creative creatures at heart, right? And so they want to do something that they're passionate about. And so that's not every coding job. That's not. And so, I reached out to them and I said, part-time, flexible, nights, weekends, I don't care, while you're brushing your teeth, 3 a.m., 4 a.m.,
Yeah.
weekends, it doesn't matter to me. You work it around your schedule. So it's like the ultimate flexibility. And yeah, but we have rigor and structure to our company. We have a daily video scrum call. And so everybody gets on it to the extent that they can. If they have a meeting at work or whatnot, they have to miss it. Of course, we understand.
Sure.
But we use tons of technology tools to keep us in line and in process. And we launched our app in January.
That's great. So for people that haven't heard of the app, what exactly are you guys doing? Because for me, it's really cool. But for people that haven't heard of it, walk us through that.
Yeah. Okay. So so they know it's called myPlanit, and it's my plan, myPlanit, one word. And the sort of the high level for the consumer app is it's an automatic life logging, life organizational tool, and we also call it's like a second brain, or somebody told me he calls it's his neural Google, because in Google you can't search yourself. You can only search other people's information. Somebody called it augmented memory. What we do is there's two parts of the app. There's the journey screen, which is passively tracking where you go. So if you go to Starbucks and you get there at 8:55 and you leave at 8:15 or 9:15, we'll record that, and we'll bring in. And what we do too, so there's two things we do: is we're passively tracking where you're going, and then we're syncing in the data that exists in your disconnected, siloed app. So as digital creatures today, we're creating tons of personal data, and this data is stored in all these various apps that don't talk to each other.
Sure.
And so I'll give you one example. A single moment of life. Say you're at dinner with a buddy and you have a terrific bottle of wine. Okay. That single moment is recorded across your various applications. Your buddy's information is in your contacts. That dinner event is on your calendar. That restaurant is in a Foursquare check-in or an email. And the photo of the wine bottle that you loved is now stranded in your camera application.
Sure.
None of those apps talk to each other, right? They don't work together. You open up each app, record some data in it, close it, and then that app stores that data in its own format for its own later use. And the result is that none of your apps have a holistic view of you, Kevin, the user.
Sure.
What we do is we sync in the data from all these different applications. And version 1 of myPlanit starts with calendar, contacts, photos, videos, and your location. And we're bringing in 2 location databases, Foursquare Venues and Google Places. And we interconnect all that data, and then we geolocate it and we geotime index it. So we then put it on a map and a timeline, so that you can find it based on how your brain works. And what I did in my sabbatical, in addition to learning how to play the guitar poorly,
it's still fun.
Yeah, but I really got into the brain, and I'm really into neuroscience and the brain, and we think in context. Okay. And the hippocampus part of the brain connects the who, what, where, when parts of the brain. And that's how we think. And so if I said, "Oh, Kevin, what was that name of that restaurant we went to? Remember, it was in Tribeca. It was summer. It was hot out. We were sweating, right?"
Sure.
That's how we think. We think in time and place. But in technology today, all of search is word-based, and there's only one neural connection to names in our brains, which is why for most of us humans, we forget the names. Well, who was that client I met at that conference, or what was the name of that bottle of wine?
Sure.
So the question becomes, what if you could search for your information without any words? What if you could search based on how your brain actually works?
Interesting.
So you zoom in on the map to Tribeca, you push the time slider back to beginning June, early September, and all your personal data that is geotime indexed to that time-space reality appears. The places you went, the events you attended, the people you met, the things you did. And that's version 1 of the app. This is why I call it augmented memory or a neural Google. You can search based on how your brain works best.
Sure. The thing that I always find, and actually the funny thing is it happened to me yesterday. My aunt called me, and she was like, what was the name of the hotel that we stayed at in Mexico a couple years ago when my wife and I got married? And so it was funny because I couldn't remember the name either. And I literally had to go back through my email and kind of Google Maps. And because I usually traditionally I usually used to try to star all the places I've kind of been when I'm traveling, just because kind of before we talk, that's kind of how I've been doing it for a number of years. And obviously it doesn't pull all the data like you guys do, because some of that data wasn't available like 5-6 years ago when I kind of started doing some of this stuff, right? But it was funny because I had basically that same experience and thing that you guys are solving happened to me personally yesterday.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, it happens to us all the time, right? I mean,
Sure.
Because a majority of the work that the brain does is trying to recall, right?
Exactly. And it was 5 years ago, so I can't remember, right? And they always have like crazy... Well, they have crazy names, right? That you're like, I can't even tell you how to begin to spell that. So
Right. So yeah, so that's sort of what the app does. And so I say we interconnect data, but we also interconnect functionality. So if you wanted to, it's not just the name of the hotel that we would bring in, but we bring in, you can get directions to it. You can call it. We'll bring in the URL. In the future, we'll be bringing in, reviews and store hours. But we also do that for the people. So if you had people attached to that, you can call and email. So which you normally have to go to your contacts to do one, and like you said, Google Maps to call the other, right? Why is that data disconnected when we experienced it, and that functionality when we experienced it together?
Sure. No, I think that's great. So you guys are on iOS currently. Are you working on an Android version at some point?
We will be. We absolutely will be building an Android version. Yeah.
Okay. The one thing that I was playing with the app, and I'm impressed about the performance that you guys got, because anybody that's ever done kind of mapping and data over mapping understands how much of a nightmare that can be. So what are you guys kind of doing for optimization? I know this is kind of a little bit nerdy, but I'm more curious to myself.
So we've spent a lot of time, and I call my developers and get them on the phone to like really answer the specifics of your question.
Sure.
But we've spent a lot of time on sort of two core things. We have algorithms for the passive tracking to get that as optimized as possible, including, minimal effect on your battery.
Sure.
Because everybody's like, oh, you're going to eat my battery. And we're like, no, we will not. We promise. So the sort of the biggest battery chunk is when you first sign up, and our little engine is working away to interconnect your calendar with your contacts, with your places, with your photos, and pull that all together.
Sure.
That initial setup will take a little bit of time, depending on how large your database is. I mean, maybe a few minutes. But after that, we've worked really, really hard. So, and we released a version a couple months ago. Before we had it where, and if you go to our website, I haven't changed the screenshots, but it was as the crow flies from one point to another. Now we actually will show you the route you actually took. But cool. Our developers are awesome, and they've worked really hard on the efficiency of that. And another thing that is a really big challenge that we've worked really hard on is syncing, because we are syncing in and interconnecting these bits of the information. Like I point this out because I think people are not necessarily aware, like they don't think about it, but we're about who, what, when, and where, right? So your people, and if you go to recall it, that's what's on the top tab bar. It has people, as places first, which is your wheres, your people, which is your who's, your tags, which is your what's, and moments, but those are chronological, so that's your when. And your physical body is always at some location, right? That's the latitude, longitude, altitude, that's the where. You're always at some point in time, that's the when. You're always doing something. That's the what. Even if you're unconscious and you're sleeping, and there's apps that track sleeping, and we'll be able to bring that data in the future. Or
Interesting.
you're meditating, right? My meditation app tracks my meditations. And you may be with somebody else. That's the who. So any sort of given nanosecond of time is this cluster of who, what, where, when data bits. We internally have a name for it, and we got actually a patent on our data structure. We
Oh,
call it
wow.
the geotemporal unit, right? So time, location. We're connecting data based on time and location because that is how, as I explained before, that's how our brains work, and that's making data really intuitive to the user. And so the syncing, so the contacts, your contacts form has a who, what, where, when. So the who is Kevin, right? The where is where you live or where you work, right? The when is your birthday. The what is if somebody tagged you. And calendars have who's, what's, where's, when's. The what is Bruce Springsteen concert. The where is Madison Square Garden. The when is the date. The who is the people I went with, right?
Sure.
And we have these who, what, where, when bits scattered across our various applications. And like I said before, they don't talk to each other. Well, what we do is we bring it in and we connect all the who's, everything about Kevin, whether, in the future we bring in Facebook or LinkedIn or my photos or my calendars or my contacts, everything about a where, right? And so that syncing, pulling those data bits out and then reconnecting them into this geotemporal unit, this molecule of life, this nanosecond of life that makes sense, is also, something that we've spent a lot of technological time on.
Sure. No, I think that's really great. So you recently also kind of took the app and moved into kind of the real estate vertical. Walk us through what you guys are doing in the real estate space.
Yeah. So we launched the consumer mobile app, but even before we launched it, we realized that our initial psychographic, even for the consumer app, is the highly mobile professional. People who are out and about and looking to, who go places and meet people. And so I was actually talking to a friend of mine who's an agent. She said, if you brought in MLS data, she said, I would live on this thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I pounded the pavement and I interviewed dozens and dozens and dozens of agents. And I showed them the app and I explained what it would do and bring in the MLS data. And the results I got, the feedback was overwhelming. It was so awesome. And so we've taken our general consumer app and not only put MLS data in it, but we've created new screens and new features that are focused directly for the real estate agents. And what it is, it's like a virtual assistant. It's connecting who, what, where, when, and bringing in MLS data and giving them features around it. So what I realized is that when agents are going on their showings and their tours, the vast majority, like almost everybody I spoke to, uses a notebook.
Interesting.
They're recording.
Wow.
Somebody I spoke to, she said she gets home at night and she writes down on paper, I took this client to this home, that one to that one, that home, this one liked the kitchen, that one hated that, the bathroom, this one has a dog, this one's son's birthday is blah, 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 right? Because they want to follow up.
Sure.
Referrals is huge for agents, for anyone in sales, right? Referrals is a higher rate of return than even an incoming lead where there's no support behind that lead, right?
Sure.
And all this data they have scattered on paper across various notebooks. I spoke to some agents who take their notebooks back to the office and they retype them into Microsoft Word or Excel.
Oh,
at least
wow.
it's searchable, right? Now
Sure.
think about all the administrative burden. But they're the smart ones. I asked a few of the agents that I spoke to for a photo of their notebook so I could put it in our decks.
Sure.
And one of them, it took her 5 days to get me the photo. She apologized. She said, I'm sorry, I lost my notebook.
Oh, that sucks.
Right? It's not even backed up in the cloud.
Sure.
And so at base level, myPlanit is recording where they're going. That you got to this home at 9:06 in the morning, you left at 9:32, and then we suck in the MLS data. So it's there. And if they take photos, we bring in the photo from the camera and connect it automatically for them. So all that information is there. They can add a note, they can speak a note in, we'll geotime, we'll index every word spoken. And now they can see by client, oh, here's all the homes I took Kevin to. And they can search by location, zoom in on the map. Here's the homes I took Kevin to in this city, in this neighborhood, on this street. They can search by time. Here's all the homes I took Kevin to last week, last month, last year.
Sure.
And they can search by words, kitchens that liked. Here's all the homes with kitchens that he liked. They can see by place. Here are all the clients I took to this one home, because everything is cross-indexed. It allows them to be the neighborhood expert because they can keep tagged lists they could say of places, schools nearby, supermarkets, wine bars, restaurants that they want to refer their clients to and share with their clients, or people, attorneys and mortgage brokers, that they'll be able to send those lists immediately to them. And here's a list of home for them to say, to show clients, here's homes that they sold in the neighborhood where their client is looking, is huge. They automatically have right there, they zoom in on the map. Here's all the homes I sold in this neighborhood. Here's the homes I sold on your street, right? All there. And then the new client features that we have, the new real estate features we have is it opens up to the section called My Hub, which is a notification center. It shows them their next 2 upcoming appointments, the current moment that they're at, in case they want to add comments, if that's a home that they're showing, and every new listing that's hitting the market that matches their client's preferences.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then we aggregate all their clients. So if they have 5 clients who match that property, it's one, we show it to them once, as opposed to what happens now is they get 5 emails from their MLS, 1 for each client. So we aggregate all of that, and they can tap on that property, they can see more detail, and because it's connected to calendar, they can automatically schedule right from there the showings. They can call the listing agent, they can call their clients, all from one place.
That's really cool, actually. I could even see how this could be used in a bunch of other verticals outside real estate, right? If you pulled in just different types of data in different kind of industries. But for the real estate professional, I love that $1 million listing show, and it's just funny because you watch kind of how they do, any real estate person. I have friends that do kind of real estate too. They're always on their phone, right? Everything lives in their smartphone, and you're basically pulling all that content into one app instead of them having to check 5, 10 plus apps, right?
Exactly. And to notify, we don't have this yet, but we are going to be building in-app chat, and they will be able to give their client a myPlanit, client edition for real estate. So now everything is centralized in one place. And I say that myPlanit's like the best, personal assistant, because it knows the agent, because it has its data, and it thinks like the agent because it's structured like our brain, right?
Sure.
And so it minimizes their administrative time, and it streamlines their communication, and then the result is that it's improving their bottom line, right? Because time is money, and all their information is there. And there was an NAR study done where they surveyed home purchasers 5 years after their home purchase, and they asked them, "Are you happy with your home?" Yes. Were you happy with your agent? Yes. What's the name of your agent? I don't remember.
Sure.
Leads is the first sort of level of business sales for agents, but referrals is the next level. And now for the first time with myPlanit, they are going to have all their information about each client centralized, organized, stored, readily accessible. So that way, when they communicate again with that client, they'll remember who they are, everything they did with them, and their preferences.
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting. Because what reminds me is when my parents bought a house, this was in the late 80s, I remember the real estate agent that they used would send a calendar yearly, right? Just a physical calendar, and it had her photo and name, right? But not very many people use like a physical calendar anymore, right? So having something that they can kind of maybe check in every year or every couple of years on kind of past people that, they sold a house to, because as, people get older and they have a family or whatever, they upgrade and downgrade and, so that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because I talk about like the physical calendar. My mom actually has the Norman Rockwell calendar still in her fridge. And she makes notes in it. She's a piano teacher and she's adorable. But the reason we have these disconnected, siloed applications is because we had paper silos.
Sure.
We had calendars, right? We had little black books, which had our people or our who's. We had yellow pages and maps, which had our places or our wheres, and our what's were in notebooks and photo albums. And technologists didn't think about it. They did not think outside the box. They just took these paper paradigms, these paper silos, and created digital analogs of them, right? And putting them on the PC. And then when we got the smartphones, they brought them over to the smartphones. And the problem is that paper silos can only handle one type of data, one structure. It can only flip in one direction, right?
Sure.
Because it's constrained by its physical nature. But in digital, we can take advantage of context. And I say that if there's Gary, do you know Gary Vaynerchuk? Have you heard of Gary Vaynerchuk? Yeah. So here's this quote, which I love, which is, if content is king, then context is God.
Sure.
And I say, right. And I say if there's one word we're in the business of, it's context. We contextualize data. And right now we're contextualizing personal data along with like third-party data. So like you brought up a really good point, like we are getting approached by other industry verticals, like the myPlanit. We used to joke internally, like, you have those investor questions like, oh, what's your demographic? Oh, well, we're only targeting people with hippocampi. If you don't have a hippocampus, this is just not for you, which is a little bit of a joke, but it is for more. Like if you're a couch potato and you go absolutely nowhere, probably myPlanit's not the greatest tool for you. But if you leave your house and you're going out and about, then everybody can use something that's organizing the app. Other than email and text messaging, myPlanit organizes the apps that you use most: your maps, your calendar, your photos, your contacts, right?
Sure.
Your notes. But because of the way that our geotemporal unit, our data structure is the way we've created it, we can append any type of metadata to a who, what, where, or when. So we can bring in Salesforce and CRM data because that's just metadata around a who. We could bring in travel data, scrape wiki travel, and that's metadata around a where. So to your point about different industries, yeah, we can just append any kind of metadata related to who, what, where, and or when.
Sure. That's great. I think this is probably a good segue into kind of, we talked about it kind of both like before we recorded and kind of before. You have a really good phrase called like the Internet of You. So I want to kind of get your take on that, because I think we're at the beginning of kind of this whole revolution that you guys are kind of solving with myPlanit and kind of the Internet of You. So what exactly does that mean to you and myPlanit?
So what the Internet of You means to me is so just to repeat, we're creating all this scattered, disconnected data about our lives. When you connect data together, it becomes very powerful and very intelligent. And actually, Tim Berners-Lee, the founder of the World Wide Web, did a TED Talk in 2009 that he called the semantic web. And he says in that talk that there was a power, and the World Wide Web is what it is. It's a collection of documents, right? It's HTTP, right? Web page connected to web page. And he said that there was a power when you connected documents, but he said it's nothing compared to the power of when you connect data bits. And he wants to connect data bit to data bit within the World Wide Web. And in this talk, he says that there's other genres of data you can connect: financial data, government data, personal data. And I'm like, ding, ding, ding. That is what we're building by connecting these various data. So it's not only just, there's connecting a who, what, where, and when together to create a moment or a nanosecond of life, or our geotemporal unit or GTU. But when you connect GTU to GTU to GTU, you're connecting moment to moment to moment, and now you're digitally recreating the flow of your real world life. And so you're understanding someone's patterns, behaviors, and movements, right? And their current real world context based on the device sensors in the phone that they're right, the data that they're transmitting,
Sure.
and anything you're putting in currently, any data you're inputting. And obviously with insights, you can understand someone's future. And so for me, the Internet of You is connecting the data from all these various siloed applications, first and foremost, to help you, the user. Like, ideally, what I would love is to have a dashboard where the user owns and controls their data. And then it's an ecosystem where your data, where you give access to those aspects of your data to different application providers because they are giving you some benefit, some value, right? So then it becomes a triple win. These application providers are getting deep intelligence about you. You're getting it so that they can give you offers or services or features. You're getting value from it. And the ecosystem, anyone who's part of the Internet of Kevin, as each application provider feeds into it, and as whatever you do in any given moment, adds to the it's sort of a cumulative build of greater and greater relevance about your life, then each application provider who comes into it not only feeds into it, but gets to take advantage of this ever-growing, integrated, hyper-personalized body of information about you. So they understand you in a deeper and meaningful way, which in turn allows them to deliver you extremely rewarding and engaging and compelling services. So to give you an example, let's say that Starbucks knows you get a chai latte before work every morning because of your purchase history. Now, if we can connect that purchase data to your calendar, to your location, now your Starbucks app can proactively say, hey, Kevin, we see you have a 9 a.m. meeting downtown. Would you like to pre-order your chai latte from the Starbucks near there? Sure. Click here to reorder, click here to order, click here to reroute, add 5 minutes to your travel time. And as you're driving to pick it up, it knows your location, and maybe it connects to Google Maps or Waze, and it realizes based on traffic, like, uh-oh, you're going to be late. So it asks you, hey, Kevin, would you like us to message the other event participants, because it has their calendar invite addresses, right, of your new ETA, right? And if Starbucks was really smart, they'd get the coffee orders of everyone else in the room with their credit cards and your permission and have those hot and ready for you to pick up. So now you're the hero, not the schmuck who came late.
No, I like that. To me is kind of my ideal kind of world, right? And the more and more kind of the internet can just kind of sort out things for that, and I think we're so close to being there. Like Starbucks already has, you can order from the app, and I know McDonald's now even has, you can order from your phone and like pick it up and they'll bring it out to you. Like, you don't have to go through drive-through anymore, and more like, and so the next level of that is going to be, you stop at Starbucks every morning, and based on where you need to be, you either go to the same one or a different one. And it's just this whole revolution is basically starting to happen.
It is. We're at the, we talked before, but I think we're like in 1995 of the internet for what I call truly personalized computing. And, I say it's Web 3.0. Web 1.0 was the document web, right? It was the World Wide Web. And you connected document to document. It was about content, and it was information for the masses. 8 million people go to Amex.com. They see the same thing. We are obviously hot and heavy in Web 2.0, which is the social web, where you're connecting person to person, but that's information about your friends. And Web 3.0 is the personal web, where you're connecting data bit to data bit. And now it's about you. And it's about delivering highly personalized, predictive services. There was this great article in Newsweek a few years ago, like 2-3 years ago, and the author said, we are entering an age of personal big data, and its impact on our lives is going to surpass that of the internet. And when you think about the impact that the internet has had on our lives, never mind something that's going to surpass that. But the author continues and says the game changer ushering in this new era is going to be the ability to let non-tech humans to make sense of the data so that non-tech humans can use it, interact with it, and learn from it. And that's why I say myPlanit literally makes sense of your data, because we're now structuring it based on how you think. And I say that we play in the space of personal big data. Some people call it little data or small data. It's data about the individual, as opposed to big data, right? And I say personal big data because the digital exhaust we create is now so massive that we are at an inflection point in history where we can start doing these things. There's enough data about us. I give a talk called The Internet of You, and I start out, I say, just think about the data you create from the minute you wake up, right? There's the time and location of where your alarm goes off, the number of times you hit snooze, your morning meditation, the emails and social media posts you read and send before you go to work, your Uber car ride or Easy Pass call, your Starbucks daily purchase, and it's not even 9 a.m. yet, right? We are literally creating data through whatever we type in, and the digital sensors, the device sensors in our phones, almost, constantly, right? So like we are consciously and unconsciously creating data all the time, and that data captures almost every aspect of our real world life, which is why we can do this. And big data, which is, it's not even like a catchphrase anymore. It's like saying computer. Like, it's big data. Like, 10 years ago, it was like, big data, what's that? Like, buzzword, big data. It's not even a buzzword anymore. But the big data is excellent for getting sort of high-level psychographic and demographic understanding, but it's aggregate level. Like they'll take tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people's information to get these aggregate level psychographics or demographics, so that they can create a cohort or a segment. So, like, you're a Caucasian male, you're in Canada, right? Who's between the age of, I don't know how old you are, 30 to 40. Okay, so good. I was 30 to 40, right? Therefore, you must be like every other Caucasian male who lives in your town between the ages of 30 and 40. Like, no, right? When you try to take big data and then plop it back down on top of the individual, it often leads to inaccurate results, or at best is only a small piece of the pie. So for us to really enter into this world of Web 3.0 or the personal web, we have to connect the data silos of you, the individual, to understand the actual context of your life, not somebody else's life.
Yeah, like kind of merging the digital and physical world, right? And then based on my historical data in the digital and physical world, tying that together is actually really fascinating.
Yeah.
So, but sadly, we're out of time. So let's close the show with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself and myPlanit.
Well, if they want to, they feel free to email me at Adrienne, ADRIENNE, at myPlanit.com.
Perfect.
myPlanit.com. And myPlanit, they could go to myPlanit.com, myPlanit.com. And if they're interested in the real estate, there's a little button on the top, and they can go and see the real estate product.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. We'll talk soon.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit the show's website at buildingthefutureshow.com. Also check us out on Facebook at Building the Future Show, and follow us on Twitter at Building Show. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com, and keep building the future.